Glasgow has warned that it will be the first city in Britain where social cohesion will break down, where suddenly people will turn against each other in the most dangerous way imaginable because of the number of asylum seekers that have come to the city. Now, let me tell you, the councillors that have warned this are many of the political lefties that believe in uncontrolled immigration, and even they concede that things have gone badly wrong. Hello everyone, this is Andre Walker. Thanks so much for watching this video. Please do subscribe and hit the bell notification icon. Also, curry lunch on Sunday the 20th of April at 1 o'clock. Tickets are in the description. I'll be doing the whole of the country relatively soon, but this is the first pilot. Please buy a ticket if you live nearby. It's going to be a great day. Okay, well, as we know, Scotland has been really pretty badly run for quite a significant amount of time. And I remember Nicola Sturgeon saying that she wanted Scotland to be independent and for it to have no borders at all. I mean, obviously, there'd be security to fly into the airport, but they didn't want any border restrictions. Anyone could move to Glasgow, to Scotland if they wanted to. And also, it was going to have no security service because it's only the English that want to be attacked. Nobody cares about Scotland. We'll be neutral. And then, of course, they wanted their waterways to be open to Russian submarines, which would have been a complete disaster for NATO. But anyway, what was going to happen was that Scotland was going to be flooded with migrants, and the first thing they were going to do was get on the train and move straight to London, which would have been the reason why we would have had to have rebuilt Hadrian's Wall, actually a little bit further north, because Hadrian's Wall wasn't actually exactly on the border with England and Scotland. Well, apparently, there are 6,000 beds for homelessness in Glasgow, of which 4,200 are currently taken up by asylum seekers, 1,000 of whom moved to the city last month. Now, I'm going to say something in, first of all, defence of the people of Kent. At one point, Kent said, the leader of Kent County Council, sorry, the chief executive of Kent County Council said that he would now have to begin turning away children from Kent from high schools in the county on the basis they were being taken up by asylum seekers. So Kent has had a problem for a long time. I mean, Dover is an absolute dump. Now, I apologise. I appreciate that, you know, there's a hinterland of Dover, which is really quite nice. And the Kent countryside is beautiful. So I'm not doing down my friends in Dover, but the place has been wrecked by uncontrolled immigration. It's such a sad thing to see. But when Kent was complaining, nobody cared. And I'll tell you the reason why nobody cares, because the reality is these lefties in Manchester and Sheffield and Leeds and in Wales and whatever, they're the cities that asylum seekers don't go to. They want to come to London. So it's people down south that are really bearing the brunt of it. It's people down south who are suffering from the poverty caused by the asylum seekers. And of course, then when, to alleviate it, the government started having hotels across the country, suddenly people across the country began to notice a problem that's been going on for years. If you became aware of this 18 months ago, it's probably only because people weren't coming to a place near you. I remember my brother was telling me about the way that Altrincham has been significantly undermined, even though it's quite a posh place in South Manchester. And of course, the good people of Altrincham didn't know what the problems were with this uncontrolled immigration until, of course, it came to their doorstep. Now, look, let me read you a couple of the comments that have been made by people, because I really do think it's extraordinary what they're saying is going to take place in Glasgow. Okay, apparently, an SNP councillor has written to the government minister, Angela Rayner, to request a sit-down to discuss the utterly untenable pressures on Glasgow that she faces when she's in the city next week. They're saying that there could be violence as a result of this, as ordinary people start to complain about the fact that they're being discriminated against in housing, being discriminated against in terms of opportunities, and also seeing their schools being overrun. And when I say schools being overrun, you've got to remember, you're a pretty poor person, right? You're struggling. Britain has not got richer in years. We used to have the same per capita income as the United States of America. It's now double us. Britain is getting poorer and poorer and poorer. And of course, you can tell because you've still got the same job and you can't afford the things you used to be able to afford. Of course, you know it's getting poorer. And then to make it worse, a third of the class can't speak English in reception of your primary school. You know, if problems weren't bad enough, you now can't get a decent education. But this SNP councillor, I'm just trying to find the quote, has basically said, the SNP declared a housing emergency a year ago. Oh, here we go. But nothing has been done, and there's only been an empty gesture. Glasgow has an ability to streamline planning permission, but that's not going to help. The big problem is, you think about this. We build, what is it? 80,000 houses per year. I'm making that figure up, but it's somewhere in that ballpark. And we bring in 1 million people a year. Now, I always say that social housing is like playing musical chairs, right? So everybody knows the game's musical chairs that kids played when they were little, right? So there are 10 kids in 8 chairs, right? When the music stops, you sit down. Okay, so 2 kids are left standing up. That is an undersupply of chairs, isn't it? There are more people than chairs. Now, you can change whatever rules you want. And the rule you could change is you could say, well, the 2 slowest kids get to sit down 2 seconds before everybody else. Right. Well, there'd still be 2 kids stood up. It'd just be a different 2 kids. That is my point about social housing. And if what you're talking about is us being overrun, if you're talking about public services being under pressure, if you're talking about schools being undermined, if you're talking about insufficient housing, the solution is to stop bringing people to the country. It's like saying, my bucket's full, what should I do? Put more water in it. It's just completely crazy. And you could say, well, let's buy a second bucket. Well, okay, that doubles the cost. But I just find this whole thing. But Glasgow descending into violence, I think, is remarkable. And what was extraordinary about that more than anything else? What was the establishment say? What did the establishment say about all this? Because, of course, we heard 3 weeks ago, Ibrox Park, there was a sign held up by Glasgow Rangers saying that they wanted foreigners out of the city. Well, of course, at the time, they were just castigated for being racist, whereas actually, the truth of the matter is, they were complaining about a problem that really exists. For the SNP to admit that there is a crisis now in Glasgow as a result of uncontrolled immigration is extraordinary. And what I think is quite interesting is this. I think increasingly now, we are in a position whereby we can say to ourselves, everybody recognises this. Let's talk a little bit about Enoch Powell. Look, Enoch Powell perhaps may have said things in a bad way, but I will say one thing about him. This concept of the rivers of blood, which I think was over the top to have said it in the way that he said it, is right, isn't it? Because we are now seeing ethnic tensions in the United Kingdom. I always say that when I grew up, the number one issue was social class. The number one issue now is race, isn't it? And your racial identity. And when I was a little boy and sort of Nick Griffin or John Tyndall used to talk about the need for us to be concerned about our racial identity, I used to think they were completely crackers. Well, of course, perhaps they were, or perhaps they just realised, or rather they'd seen what was happening in working class England and believed it was going to go much further. I mean, when we look at it, 70% of housing, social housing in London goes to people who weren't born in the United Kingdom. That sort of level is extraordinary. And to warn now that there will be violence on the streets as a result of what has taken place, I think is extraordinary. Well, thanks so much for watching this video. I just want to say to you, please, 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 please take a look at the link in the description to either join the Patriot Fund or come to our very first curry lunch. If you join the Patriot Fund, by the way, you'll get informed about these events first. And the Patriot Fund is helping to try and stop a 2-tier society. Clearly, you can only come to the curry lunch if you are at least within striking distance of Windsor. Don't worry about that. This is the pilot, and we're going to be rolling it out across the whole of the country. But it's a sit-down dinner, unlimited food, and then we're going to have a little bit of a speech and a talk so that we can all discuss our ideas. And I'm hoping this will be a regular basis that effectively, say 4 times a year, I'm in your area. And so, it's not going to be a weekly thing, but I think, well, weekly for me, but not perhaps for you. I'm hoping that you'll be able to support it. Until next time, goodbye.